Hello everyone, I am Debbie Harrison, the Medical Education Manager. We have got our 3 medical students on the line from what I can see, but we'll just wait a couple more minutes to see if there's any more sixth form students on the line. Thank you for bearing with us. There's a few more people coming on. We'll just give it a couple of more minutes and then I'll introduce everyone. Right, thank you everyone for your patience. I think we might as well get started. So we've had 3 lovely volunteers of our medical students that are going to talk to you today. We have Sean, we have Maddie and we have Elliot. So what I'll do is I'll ask them to take it in turns and to give a bit of a background of why they chose to do medicine, how they chose their university and what it's like to be a med student. And I know that some of them have been in the hospital during the COVID, so they can give you some examples of that. If anyone has got any questions, if you want to type them in the chat box, when the conversations is finished, I will go through and ask the questions for everyone. So Maddie, are you happy to start first?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah, I'll just put myself on mute if you're just happy to do, like I say, a bit of a introduction and cover that, and then maybe we'll do Sean and then Elliot, and then we'll see what questions they've got for you, if that's all right. Okay.
Yeah. So my name's Maddie. I'm now just coming to the end of my 4th year. So in September, I'll be going to my final year of medicine. I'm originally from Brighton, and I applied to med school twice. So I applied when I was doing my A-levels, didn't get any offers, didn't get any interviews. So I took a gap year and reapplied on my gap year, and then got a place from Sheffield and from one other medical school as well. So one thing I would say is to definitely not be disheartened if it doesn't go to plan the first time round, because actually when I arrived to medical school, a lot of people were in the same position as me, and actually most of my close friends now were all people who also took gap years and also applied more than once. So just to kind of bear in mind, it obviously is very competitive process, and just don't get disheartened if you end up doing the same thing. And I actually was really glad that I took a gap year, and I ended up working in a hospital as a healthcare assistant for that year, and then I got to go traveling for a bit, and they were both experiences that I don't regret at all and have really helped me actually kind of whilst I've been a student. So that's kind of how I applied. I also took a year out between my 3rd and 4th year. I don't know if you guys will have heard much about intercalating or doing like other degrees within your degree. I don't think I knew much about it when I was applying, but it's something that you can do. At Sheffield, it's optional. At some of the medical schools, it's compulsory. So you may well have read some bits about it, but I decided to go to Manchester, and I did global health for a year, which I really enjoyed, and would really recommend intercalating if it is an option, because I think it made me a much more kind of curious and kind of better medical student in that sense. Not sure what else to say. I think, being a medical student, it is quite hard work sometimes, but I wouldn't be put off by that. I think when I was applying, I was quite nervous about kind of if I would be able to find time to do things I enjoyed, or kind of have a life outside of uni, and like it definitely is possible. And I think medical students generally are actually pretty sociable, and there's a lot of opportunity to kind of really get to know your course mates, but do things that are unrelated to medicine as well whilst you're at uni. Sheffield I chose because my brother had actually studied at Sheffield, not doing medicine, doing another degree. So I kind of knew the city a bit already. Obviously, I said at the beginning, I'm from Brighton, so it's quite far away, but I just really felt like Sheffield was a really friendly place. And from looking around at a few different unis, they seem really like the friendliest. From when I was looking at open days, they were really welcoming, and I just felt very kind of comfortable here. And also realistically with medicine, you sometimes just have to go where you'll get the offer. So I ended up getting an offer from another med school as well, but Sheffield was definitely my preference. I don't know if that covers kind of everything I wanted to say. If I don't know who's going next. Sean, are you going next?
And I applied from school, didn't get any offers, didn't get any interview. And instead of doing a gap year, I wasn't quite sure on medicine at the time, so I decided to do another degree. So I did medical physiology, at a different university. And then through doing that, I kind of realised that I enjoyed the science side, but it wasn't what I wanted to do for a career, and that medicine was a better fit for me. So I'm doing medicine as a grad. I'm not integrating for that reason. So Maddie's taking a year out to do another degree, but because I've already got one, I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going straight through. Why did I apply to Sheffield? I went on an open day in my first year, and I just really liked the city and I really liked the course structure. So I applied from school, didn't get any offers or interviews. Then I applied in my last year of university and I got 2 interviews and I didn't get any offers from those interviews. So then I had a gap year after. I worked as a healthcare assistant for a year, and then applied, and then I got 3 offers. So I had 2 other offers from different universities, but I picked Sheffield because I actually really like the city. Trying to think what else to say. Yeah, I think that's pretty much sums me up. If you want to go next, Elliot.
Hi everyone. So similarly to Sean and Maddie, I didn't get in first time either. So I took a gap year as well. I worked as a full-time carer during that year, and I think, to be honest with you, I think it probably was better that I ended up doing a year out in between. I think I kind of learned a lot about, you know, what it's like to work in the healthcare setting, and gain that experience. And I think that kind of comes across in your CV, whatever it is, your personal portfolio, and in interview. So I wouldn't discount having a gap year, either forced to or by choice. So I do think it makes you a bit more of a rounded person when you come into medicine. For me, Sheffield was my top choice, really, second time around, because 1, as Maddie said, they're really friendly here. 2, my brother was also here doing mechanical engineering at the time. And 3, quite a lot of my family are from Sheffield originally, although I do live in Nottingham as my kind of home. So it kind of made sense to me, and it's quite a nice mix of city life with, you know, some kind of cultural stuff. So there's the peaks, which go to quite regularly, which is quite a nice break, and there's a lot of variety in Sheffield. So that's kind of why I chose Sheffield as my place to do medicine. I think Dale mentioned about working in the hospital. So we've all been working in the hospital during the pandemic as kind of, we're named student assistants, but we're sort of like HCAs, kind of clerking patients a little bit and doing kind of the odd jobs around the ward, which is really nice. Really good experience. I think it kind of just highlights that in medicine there's such variety in what you get to do, because we ended up doing that because of the circumstances. But you know, I personally do a lot of extracurricular stuff. So I do sports, I do academic societies, and I think that makes you kind of a more sustainable medical student. So having a diversity in your interests and what you do in medicine is really good, and it does afford you to do that and explore your kind of other interests. So I would say, you know, it's very easy to get bogged down in medicine, and it is quite a lot of work at points, but it does offer you a life as well on the side of it, if you go looking for it.
You're muted, Debbie.
I was saying thank you very much. That would give the sixth formers lots to think about. Now, does anyone have any questions, either general questions on being a medical student or university, or specific questions based on anything that Maddie, Elliot and Sean have said? Just give it a bit of time, because they type, you see.
There's something else I forgot to mention.
Oh, yep.
I also really remember when I was applying, I found it really, really overwhelming that like the courses were generally quite similar. Obviously the content is quite similar, and like knowing where to apply and kind of working out which ones are best to apply to can feel like quite a big thing. But I would say apply to your strengths, kind of think about like what is really important to you, and also in terms of like the application process, I don't know what admissions tests are still being used, but when we were applying we all had to do various kind of different ones. I did the UK CAP, but I know some people do the BMAT and some people do both, and it varies on which course you're applying to. So it's definitely worth looking into which courses are looking for like which admissions test or like which specific subject, because like that can really help you to work out where you're more likely to get an offer, and more likely to get interviews from that as well.
Yeah, I'd pick up on that. I did all the tests, did the BMAT, the UK CAT, the whole shebang. So if you have any questions about that, by all means. And also done some interviewing on the multiple mini interviews here in Sheffield. So if you have any questions on that, then I can try and supplement with that.
Okay, so we've had some questions coming in. So we have had, do you have any UCAT or BMAT advice?
So I did the UK CAT. I can't really give any advice for the BMAT because I didn't do it. So I'm not sure, because it will be quite a while since we've done it. I'm not sure what sections they still have in yours. I think when I did it, they were trialing changing the decision making, and I'm not sure what that is now. I think the thing that I did that was great is get as many books as you can. I had, I think, 3. Hang on, I've got it here. Just the right one. Yes, this one is really good. It's got like 1,000 questions in. Just keep doing them. They've got practice ones. They say that you shouldn't have to practice them. It's meant to be kind of a like natural intelligence test, but it's really not. Especially on like I really struggle with the abstract reasoning because it just doesn't make any sense to me. I think for most people it's the hardest one. So kind of getting to use with the things that they'll be doing, like the patterns that they tend to use, is a really good way of preparing. I think there's a maths bit which I feel like is a little, there's not really much practice you can do apart from just trying to do like maths questions as quickly as possible. And then for the reading section, I would just say practice skim reading things, practice skim reading questions. Don't read the whole paragraph, read the question and then try and skim it as fast as you can to find the bit that matches. And if it's taking too long to do one question, just flag it and move on to the next one, because there's no point, each question is worth the same, and some of them are really easy and some of them are really hard. So you might as well just skip the hard ones and go for the easy ones and then come back to the hard ones, I would say.
Yeah, I would echo that. And also with the maths questions as well, I didn't do maths A-level, so I was really stressed about doing all of the maths questions. But things that really helped me was just trying to do a lot of like, it sounds quite basic, but like learning your times tables and things like that, because there will be, you get a calculator, but actually some of the maths is a lot quicker to just do in your head. And so if you can do as much of it in your head as possible, and like there's just certain things that just become really natural for you to recall. I remember that being quite a good time saver for the exam. And also, yeah, with the abstract reasoning, I found impossibly difficult, and kind of just, yeah, like Sean said, just like practice as much as you can. Like that's really all you can do for them. I think you put yourself in a much better position if you've like done it and try and do it under time pressure, like as you get closer to it, because on the day, like obviously you're stressed and it is quite long. I think it was like a couple of hours at least. And you're in like I mean, I did it in like a driving test centre as well, so everyone around me was doing their driving theory. So yeah, it is quite long, but yeah, just I would say practice like the things that can come really quickly to you with the maths particularly. That will definitely help save you some time.
Just on the maths bit as well, the calculator that you get given is on the computer, so you have to click, and it takes ages. So it like use it as like a last resort, really. Try and do the maths in your head or write it down.
Yeah, for sure. I think with a lot of it is just repetition, although it is super duper boring. For example, the abstract reasoning, you'll pick up certain things that they do, which you can look out for. So like certain shapes are the same, across the board or whatever it is. It's a long time since I've done it, so I can't exactly remember. But just repetition, and you'll find things which you'll think about to look for when you're doing it, and sometimes you'll pick them up and it'll be a quick and easy question for you to do. And if you are struggling, definitely just move on. Just move, because it's very easy to get bogged down, worry about a question, and then you've wasted the time that you could have been doing 2 other questions. So set yourself a time for doing each question. And if you go over that, just move on, and then maybe come back to it if you do have any time at the end, although you're very unlikely to. With the BMAT, I seem to remember the BMAT being a lot more enjoyable than the UK CAT, because I think it's a lot of just A-level maths and science. So I think the preparation that you do for your A-levels probably would be plenty for the BMAT. There are specific books out there, I remember, and I think there's some online tests that you can do which are free. So I think the science and maths that you'll do as part of your A-levels should be sufficient to get through the BMAT, and it's not quite so tedious as the UK CAT. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have, how long would you recommend practicing for the UCAT? I don't know if that's something you can answer.
I don't know if 2 months before is probably, like, not constant, but like a little bit every day, maybe a month before, 2 months. It depends how much practice you think you need. I think I did it like 6 weeks or something, but it wasn't like every day, 9 to 5. It was like a little bit of stuff every day.
Yeah, I think it's quite easy to burn yourself out doing it, so I wouldn't start too early with it. And quite a lot of the stuff that you pick up, you'll pick up quite quickly. So seeing the abstract reasoning stuff or the decision making one, I believe, you can ramp yourself up to the test quite quickly within probably about 6 weeks, I'd say, actually. So I wouldn't start out too early, and 2, you might run out of resources as well. So there's nothing worse than being 2 weeks out and you run out of all your questions. So don't overdo it too early.
Yeah, and you definitely don't need to be preparing like all day every day. Like it's not like with like your A-level exams or anything. Like I would do maybe like an hour a day at the beginning, and then maybe just like slightly increase it in a couple of weeks beforehand. But yeah, like definitely don't. You don't need to spend loads and loads and loads of time like for months and months beforehand. Because yeah, they do definitely say that it's not revisable. You can prepare for it absolutely, but yeah, don't run out of what you need to practice with, because that's the worst.
Okay.
I think there's also a practice on the exam. I don't know if there's, I'm pretty sure when we did it there was maybe one online you could do beforehand. If that still exists, then yeah, kind of wait until just a few days beforehand to do that, because obviously there's only one and you don't want to use that one up too early.
Okay, so we've got, when would you recommend to start preparing for interviews, and how would you prepare?
So I think for interviews in Sheffield, they send out the questions that you're going to get beforehand. So you already have an idea of what you're going to be asked when you go in there straight away. So basically, I'd just write down what your initial thoughts are, and then kind of research a little bit about kind of what Sheffield's looking for specifically. It'll differ between medical schools. But yeah, just write it down, and when you get into the interview, it's very easy to come across quite robotic. I've noticed that a couple of times. People have kind of read off something, recite something verbatim, and in reality, what you're looking for in an interview is an authentic person. So someone who you think is personable and will get along with patients as well. So I wouldn't write out a paragraph and try and recite it in the interview. I'd go in there with some ideas of what you want to talk about, and then just have a discussion with the interviewer there about the topics that they want to get out of you.
I would also say, similar to this book, it looks the same, but there's one that says like practice interview questions, and they've pretty much got most of the questions that they could possibly ask you. So I think I've found that like the most useful thing, and just having that and being able to work through every single question and think of what you would say in that response. But again, don't make it like don't memorize something, just think about like talking points that you have for that question, because otherwise it can sometimes come across as, like Elliot said, a bit robotic and a bit kind of not fake, but that's I also went on a course for interviews. I don't know if it was that worth it, but I did get like this was the one it was, ICS Medical. It was okay. I feel like it was for people that were really struggling. I feel like don't go on a course. Well, actually, I'm not going to say that, but I only did it because it was my third time applying, and I thought, like, I can't afford to not get in this time, so I'm going to do everything I can. So don't worry about not going on a course or something like that. But it was useful, but I could have got the information from other places, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to think as well, because when I had my Sheffield interview, we didn't get given our questions kind of in advance. And for the other interview I had, it was also this like multiple mini interview thing. I think most medical schools are using that format now. I don't know if any of them are doing panel interviews anymore. And some advice I got before going to them was kind of, the good thing about it being in different stations is like it's very portioned off. So if you feel like a station hasn't gone well for you, just try and forget about it. Like it's you can literally just separate off and be like, okay, that one wasn't great, but I'm going on to the next one, and it's a new person and they didn't see what I am worried about having done. So just try and kind of go into each station with just like a kind of clean slate, and like don't worry about what's coming up afterwards or what you've just done, because you can't change it anyway. So just bear that in mind. And I think for when I started preparing, I think I got both my interviews were in January, and I think they let us know around kind of November, December. I just started preparing when I found out. So yeah, I think something as well I did was I just like practiced kind of speaking, like sometimes just to myself, like in the mirror, or like to my parents, or people I was living with, and I would just kind of talk about things, because it's well and good to like write things out that you think you might want to say, but like actually practice speaking it as well. It just feels more natural. And also kind of don't worry too much after the interview as well. I thought I'd completely screwed up my Sheffield interview. Like I actually was convinced that I hadn't gotten in. And I remember being really, really upset when I got home, and I was like, oh, I've completely like ruined that. They're never going to give me an offer. And then I did get an offer. So actually kind of don't try not to think about it too much afterwards. I know that's easier said than done, but you really don't know, to be honest. Like there's no way of telling 100% kind of if you have or haven't gotten in. So just once it's happened, just try and forget about it as much as you can and just see what happens.
Yeah, I think one thing that so some students get super duper nervous before they go in there, and as interviewers, you're kind of looking to get the best out of the person. So the interviewer is trying to get the best out of you when you're in there. So it's not a case of they're trying to scrutinize you for every nth degree. It's a case of they're trying to see how good you could be as a medical student. So try and keep your nerves to a manageable level. and a useful level, because nerves are good. They kind of sharpen you up when you get into the interview. But, you know, don't worry too much about the what the other person's thinking, perhaps, because ultimately they are there to try and make you trying to sieve out, you know, and get the best out of you to see what you could be like as a medical student. And there's one other myth that I see quite a lot is when people walk into the waiting area, that you're being judged straight off the bat by people who are walking around. And it's complete and utter myth. The only time where you're being assessed is when you're in the interview itself. So if there's people trying to, you know, trying to put you off your game, or, you know, trying to come across in a certain manner, just be yourself. You know, you can only share the best side of yourself. So I wouldn't worry too much about, you know, being perfect all the time in the interview and in the waiting area beforehand. Just take that time to relax and, you know, try and focus yourself.
Thank you. So we've had a very good question, but might be a bit difficult to answer. What inspired you to study medicine?
This is the kind of question that you get after interviews, and at the time I had like a really like coherent reply, and now it's been so long. I think I mean, I'm not from like a medical family. No one else in my family is a doctor. So I didn't grow up kind of with that intention. And I felt like I kind of came to this like wanting to do medicine relatively late compared to some people who I knew who'd wanted to do it since they were like 11. And I felt a bit like, oh, is this, you know, is this for me? Like, am I actually going to be good at this? And I think, to be honest, I used to watch quite a lot of medical dramas, and like that is actually what like first put the idea in my head. And I know that they say not to say that because obviously they're not very realistic, but that was like kind of what first put the idea in my head. And then when I really looked into it and kind of thinking about what I was interested in and what I felt that were my stronger subjects, and to be honest, when it really came down to looking into if I wanted to do the course, the thing that made me really realize was that every other course I looked at, I was like, I just don't think I would enjoy this as much as I would enjoy doing medicine. So yeah, kind of, it was really in the back of my mind for a few years, but it was only when I was at college that I was like, oh, maybe I actually would do this. And I think, yeah, I just kind of liked the idea of doing a degree that was quite focused on a career, but also a career that is about kind of helping people. It sounds really cliche, but I think cliches exist for a reason, don't they? A lot of people want to do it because you enjoy science, you like applying science to real people, and it's it's a job that can make a difference to people's lives, and that is really rewarding. And I would say that, like, having studied it now, like, I would still agree with all of those things about it. Like, you do get to apply science, and you do definitely impact people's lives. So yeah, I didn't have any kind of like big epiphany or like big kind of inspirational thing. It was more of a slow burn for me. Don't know what happened with you guys.
I think mine's a bit different because I wasn't really sure. I wasn't like the person who in like since they were 11 wanting to be a doctor. I don't think those people, there are probably only a few of those people. I think if you are one of those, then that's great, but I don't think that's what I felt like when I was at sixth form, because I didn't feel like that I wasn't meant to be a doctor. And I feel like that's not true, because to have doubts about things is like human, and to not really know what you want to do in life is fine. I didn't get a great amount of support at school. I had a teacher tell me I wouldn't be capable of doing it, so I didn't really have much self-confidence applying from school. And then when I didn't get any interviews or offers, I kind of thought, well, like, they were right. So I think self-confidence is really important. So then I went to do, similar to what Maddie said, like enjoying science and wanting to apply it. I did a medical science degree, and I really enjoyed the first like year and a half, and then I kind of realised that what it was gearing up for was like a lab-based, like, career, and I thought this just isn't really for me. But also, like, the experience kind of made me into the person that would be capable of doing medicine, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not the same person that I was at school. I'm a lot more confident now. Kind of got off on a tangent. Where was I going with this? So then I realised that, like, I wanted a career that isn't in a lab, still involves science, still involves people. And I think, like, the great thing about medicine is how diverse, like, being a doctor isn't just one job. There's so many different jobs you can do with it. I think there's so many avenues, there's so many options for, like, how much you want to do and whether you combine that with teaching or research and things like that. And at the end of the day, it's also quite, like, an exciting career. Like, there's so much going on that, like, no day is really the same. So that was one of the reasons. And also, like Maddie said, I used to really like House. I've watched, like, every season, every episode, and I think that was actually, like, I realised that that's where, like, the kind of excitement for it comes from. And obviously it's not realistic because that's not every day, but it is still getting excited by, like, different diseases and things like that. Sounds a bit lame, but, like, that was what kind of made me want to do it.
Yeah, I think I went through a couple of phases of wanting to do medicine, not wanting to do medicine, but ultimately it kind of came back to what I was just interested in academically, because when you're in A level you have no idea what the working environment is. Being a medic, you just know your personal interest in science and maths at that point, which is where I got up to. I was like, well, there's nothing really here that suits my, one, skill set, and two, my interest level other than medicine. So I just, that was anything that fit me at that time. So I went and applied for it, and I got it in the end. And I think an interview, they do ask you, like, why medicine, or what motivates you to do medicine, and it's really hard to give an honest answer that's not, like, just horrifically cheesy. So, like, I was born to do medicine, all I want to do is help people. Where in reality, quite a lot of motivation for medicine is not that. It's kind of, for me at least, it's kind of like an interest point of view, keeping things diverse, and it's always changing. You're always learning something new, and I find kind of doing the same thing over and over again really boring and monotonous. So for me, medicine kind of ticks a lot of boxes in my academic interest to keeping me interested in what I'm doing. So I think that's what kind of motivates me to do medicine and keep doing medicine. And from and where you are now. So if I was thinking back to, like, how I was in A level, I'm a completely different person now. So I think it's really, really nice to see how medicine kind of changes you over time. And I think that's what also motivates me to keep going, to see where I get to in the future.
Yeah, and kind of following up from that as well, like, I also feel like I'm a very different person now than when I was applying, and kind of be confident in yourself. Like, I kept thinking, I'm not going to get in because I'm not sure that I'm, like, really the person they're looking for, or, like, I've not done all of these, like, amazing things that lots of other people have done, and I haven't wanted to do this forever, and all of these things. It's very easy to really get in your head about and doubt yourself for. But if you want to do it, there's, like, just do it, just apply. Like, you've got nothing to lose. Like, the worst that will happen is you don't get in first time, but, like, all three of us didn't get in first time. And I think actually it's quite character building to, like, have an experience or something that you really, really want, and kind of having to go through some harder things to get there. I'm not saying that people who get in first time like don't deserve it, but I think kind of, yeah, take everything kind of as an opportunity to grow from that as well. Like, it's not, it doesn't mean that you don't deserve it if you don't get in. It doesn't mean that you won't be a really great doctor at the end of it. It's just like a slightly different path, and that's fine. There's another question.
Thank you. How have you mentally coped with the COVID-19 pandemic? Good question.
I can start. So I was on my elective when the COVID-19 pandemic happened. So I'd been away for a week. I don't know if you guys have heard what electives are, but they're placements that you organise yourself, and typically people go abroad. So I'd gone to Singapore and been there for a week, and then we actually had to come back because of the pandemic. And I then came back home to Brighton, where I have a job as a healthcare assistant, kind of just on the nursing bank. So I worked there for about a month, and then I came and worked in Rotherham as well afterwards. But I think it was, I mean, it's quite scary to go to work and not really be sure if you're safe, or particularly at the beginning where there wasn't a lot of PPE around. Sometimes you would go to wards and you wouldn't have anything to protect yourself with, and it is quite scary. But I actually really felt a lot of the wards I worked on, particularly in Brighton, because I'd be working on different wards, medicine sometimes can feel quite hierarchical, and kind of hospitals generally can feel quite hierarchical, I've found. But something I've really felt during the pandemic is that kind of the hierarchy has gone a little bit. Like, it just kind of felt like, because there was this really quite scary thing happening that everyone is trying to work out in their own way and doing their best with, and there's so much that everyone is learning all the time, I actually really felt like I quite enjoyed coming to work, because you felt like you were kind of all in it together, and actually it felt like a lot less of a hierarchy when I was at work. Obviously it does have its challenges as well, like it can feel quite scary. I think now it doesn't feel as there's generally like better PPE everywhere and that kind of thing, but yeah, it wasn't what I was expecting obviously to happen, but I think that's actually been kind of a nice positive for me from it.
Yeah, I think it's been difficult for everyone really. When it first, so I was on my GP placement, so I kind of got a weird run up to it, because we kind of started to hear about it a bit more, and people were talking about it, and they were like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen, and then it was always kind of like being talked about every day, and then they were having daily updates about what was going on. And then I went in one day and they decided to not see any patients. It was really weird. The whole GP surgery was empty, and they were just seeing everyone online. And then I got home and then got an email from the med school saying that placements had been suspended until further notice. I think for everyone it's just been quite like generally a bit scary, and obviously we chose to go in, but there are a lot of people that didn't get to choose to go in. They had to go in because it's their job. I think at the beginning of it, obviously I don't know what your experiences of it were, but there seemed to be quite a lot of misinformation about what it was like. Like, I remember saying to people, oh, it's just going to be like the flu, or just be like influenza. And I think when I volunteered, I didn't even at the time, I didn't really grasp what volunteering meant, because it was still affecting young people, and I don't think we really knew like the extent to which it was causing like recovery times to be so long. Like, there are people still recovering from it. My housemate had it when she was back home, and she's still not got, I think it's been like 14-15 weeks now, she's still not got her taste and smell back. And there are people that are still, so I think like I've stopped working at Rotherham now just because I wanted to come home and see my parents. So I think there is that kind of like, not stress, but like thinking about that kind of thing. I think it's also been quite, I don't know what Elliot and Maddie think, but I feel like it's been quite hard to maintain like the work ethic, because obviously all of our teaching's moved online and we don't have any placements. So we're just kind of watching a screen all day. I'm sure you guys are doing the same thing for A levels. And it's been difficult because like this is the learning part is like the boring part of medicine. So it's that every single day, and the teaching's variable. And we're not getting to see patients or do stuff. So there's definitely a lot of stress around missing out. And I've also had my elective for next year cancelled because we're going to have to catch up with things we've missed. So that's a bit of a downer, but there have been some positives. Like I've had a lot more time to do things that I want to do. Well, some things. Yeah, it's not been as stressful, I suppose, because I'm not having to go into placement every day.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of positives for us as students out of this. Evidently, there's a lot of negatives for patients and those that had coronavirus. But it's been quite good for us in the sense that if working in Rotherham, we were relatively shielded from the coronavirus patients. So I worked on the equivalent of the clean A&E side. So I got tons and tons and tons of good experience from working in Rotherham, clinical skills, taking medical histories, etc., etc. So I think it didn't really come into my thought process of what the negatives possibly could be, because it doesn't make you productive when you're in on placement. Because if you're thinking about oh, this could possibly happen X, Y, Z, they're not going to be an efficient staff member as we were. So I was trying to look at the positives and how I can maximize the benefit that I'm getting out of it. So I think mental approach, that kind of translates also to interviews. There's always positive to take out of it. Or applied to medicine, should I say. There's always positive to take out of it, and it just takes a little bit of hindsight to see that it does make you better further down the line. I don't like online teaching at all. It really drives me up the wall. Sitting at the screen all day gives me a headache. So I'm literally, I do what I need to do, and then I'm off out doing something. So it's quite nice that we've had a bit of time to indulge our other interests, should I say. Go outside when we can. I do think it's kind of brought together a sense of community with everybody. I chat to people who I wouldn't usually chat to over the phone, just say how are you doing, what's going on. So I suppose that's been another positive. But I would like to get back to normality, because me and Maddie are in the imminent danger of becoming doctors next year, and we're not on placement at the moment. So I would quite like to see some patients eventually.
Okay, thank you very much. That was the last of the questions that we've got typed in. Has anyone else got any more questions they want to add? You need that little thing like you've got on WhatsApp, that if you can see if someone's typing or not.
How is an elective? How is an elective chosen? So you can organise them yourself completely. So Sheffield, I mean, it is hard obviously because I think they've just cancelled them indefinitely for a lot of the year groups. I think even the second years, I'm not sure if they are scheduled to have them or not.
I think
maybe
they're cancelled for everyone until there's some resolution. So they
right,
might give them back to second years, but at the moment they don't have them.
Okay. So this may not happen, I don't know. So in Sheffield, the way it is you're all in different blocks and you all go on your elective at different times. So we got to choose I mean, we got to choose what block we wanted to be in. It was actually quite competitive, and like the slots went quickly. So I think a lot of people actually ended up in blocks they didn't want. But yeah, and then you just completely organise it. So some people do them in the UK. I know of a couple of people who stayed in Sheffield to do theirs, but a lot of people take the opportunity to go abroad, do it there. And yeah, it's all just completely, if you're struggling to find a placement, the med school will help you, and they can like put you in contact with people. But I think generally everyone I know, and I just organised mine as well, and most people go with friends as well. So I was due to go with my housemates, and most people tend to go in groups, but some people go on their own as well. It's just completely up to you. So it's really just chosen via like where you want to go and what particular kind of area you're interested in, because you can go with like specific specialties as well. Yeah. I mean, I don't know when they'll be when they'll be back on the curriculum. Who knows? So
who knows? It doesn't have to be an academic interest / work interest though. Like for me, I chose to go to Fiji just because it sounded cool. And there wasn't really a department which I was like, oh, I need to go and experience cardiology in Fiji. I was like, oh, this is quite a nice place that I've never been to, and it's quite a cool place of the world which I've never really thought of going to. So it's a good opportunity to get a bit of cultural experience actually. But who knows if you'll be allowed to go on electives in the future. Hopefully you will be. How have you decided what speciality you want to go into? I haven't personally. I find as I go through medicine, I'm kind of ruling things out rather than I came with an idea of what I want to do. So as I go through placements, I'm very much a case of, I really don't want to do that. I didn't enjoy that. And I think it might be partly because of my experience of that. It might be down to the, the consultants or the people, I didn't quite get on with them or something like that. But, as I've gone through med school, I've found my interest. So I'm quite interested in medical education and academic research. So I'm looking for a specialty which kind of fulfills that as well. Some people do come into medicine with kind of a born interest to be, I don't know, a neurosurgeon or something, and quite often they end up wanting to do something else. So I'd recommend coming in with an idea to not have an idea and just, take it as it comes, have a broad breadth of experience doing medicine, and I think that will probably put you in good stead, whatever you choose to do.
Yeah, I've never really understood the people that want to be a specific specialty. Like, there's some people in my ear that are like, oh, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon, and I'm like, how would you know? Like, you haven't done it before, so how would you know?
I think you can tell an orthopedic surgeon though from
the
rest of medicine, can't you?
Certain type of person. I don't know what I want to do either. I think the same as Elliot, it's more about experiencing everything that there is and like having an open mind, and then kind of ruling some things out as you go along. I was this year in third year, you kind of start doing some of the specialties, which is a bit annoying because now I can't do them at the moment because of COVID. But then also, I think having done some of the teaching, I've quite enjoyed psychiatry, and that's not something I thought about doing before I'd started. I think it's really interesting. I'm quite interested in general practice and pediatrics. I quite like things general because I don't like to focus on one thing. I know I definitely don't want to do surgery just because I don't like standing still. And it's just not really for me. So I know I've ruled out surgery, and I know I've ruled out a few other smaller specialties. But I think the things when you do F1 and F2, it's complicated, but you have to like pick three specialties or 3 rotations in your first year and then 3 in your second year. And those really are better time to get to experience what the actual job is like, because even on placement you kind of are just watching, or you might be doing some bits but you're not fully doing the job. So I think though when you get to F1 and F2 you kind of really experience what the job is like and whether you want to pursue that, and then you can do something called an F3 year where you do like specialties that you haven't done before. You do it for a longer time to get to experience different things, and then you can kind of shape your career like that. But there's no like rush, and no one is kind of forcing you down any kind of specialty. You can take it as slow as you want, really. And there are people that get to like 3 years into being a doctor and they're like, oh, I don't really know what I want to do still, and that's fine.
Yeah, I would agree. I think of the good friends that I have who I met in first year, like quite a few of them actually came with ideas of like specifically what they wanted to do, and only one of them seems to like still be wanting to do that. So similarly not really sure what I'll end up doing. I definitely know what I'm more interested in, and I really like kind of like sexual and reproductive health, but again, like not able to have much experience in that as well. Particularly the block that I'm now on was due to be one where you choose a placement that you want to go on in Sheffield. So I was hoping to do that for this block, but obviously that's now not possible. So I think, just trying to stay open-minded, and yeah, like Sean said, like you meet doctors who have been foundation grade for years and years, and they're just kind of getting more experience and working out what it is they want to do. And I think even once you have decided on a specialty, there's still a lot of scope to like switch even once you start on a training pathway. So there's definitely kind of benefits to not knowing what you want to do either, because I think you kind of take everything maybe a bit more openly, and I do know some people who know what they want to do, so they then kind of disregard all the other specialties, but actually I think it's quite nice to just kind of be a bit more open to doing different things, and there's really no pressure. Like you have your whole life to do this thing. Like it's actually kind of more interesting to kind of get to do lots of different things. So yeah, I don't know either.
Okay, well, I think...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say about swapping specialties, that when I was working at Rotherham, one of the trainee GP doctors, because when you're doing GP training, you have to do some time in hospital. She had been a paediatric registrar, so that's like kind of just below a consultant. And I can't remember how many years she'd got up to that. 6 years she'd done to that, and then she decided that the lifestyle of pediatrics wasn't really for her anymore, and she just thought, you know what, I want to be a GP now, and she just swapped training programs and she moved into a different one. So there is scope to do that. You're not kind of pigeonholed into something and then you have to do it. And you can also come out of training if you don't want to keep going up, you can just come out of a role and stick at that, like if you've got other commitments in life or things happen. So there's so much flexibility with it, really.
Yeah, and even once you're a consultant as well, like the GP placement I was most recently on, everyone at his practice had actually been consultants in different specialties and then become GPs. And yeah, there's kind of even at that kind of really advanced level of your career, you can still take different paths with it. And there's all kinds of like policy work and, things that kind of are outside clinical medicine you can do as well. So it's not very, it doesn't limit you in what you can do, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. That seems to be the last question. I think there's been some really good questions from the sixth formers. So I want to thank Elliot, Sean and Maddie for giving up some of their time to speak to you. And hopefully you got all your questions answered that you wanted to ask. And hopefully it'll inspire you a bit more and give you some more to think about. So thank you very much. Sixth formers, I hope you've looking at the rest of the website. There's lots of other videos on there, and hopefully you'll get some useful information out of there. So thank you, everyone.